Oh yeah. Nah. Go. Go.
Oh, I don't hear anything. Okay.
Yeah. I already played the instrumental. Go.
Thank you for tuning in. You are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio World. This is Women Empowerment Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Carmelle Bias. We are in the studio once again with our guest, Miss Angela of Beacon Business Alliance, here located in Seattle, Washington. Miss Angela, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. This is wild being on Radio App Radio with you today. Wow.
Yes, we are glad to have you. But before we jump into our interview today, as I normally like to do, want to go ahead and give some announcements in the work it is that we are doing in the community. Women in Business Expo Group, we are hosting our leadership luncheon March 9th. This is going to be 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Rainier Beach Community Center located here in Seattle, Washington, 8825 Rainier Avenue South. Oh, this is going to be a great time for the community to be able to come together. We're going to be talking to our panelists. We have 5 panelists at this event. We're going to be discussing the topic of how do small business owners increase visibility while inspiring and transforming the lives of our youth to become leaders in our community. So we're tackling that issue of young people that are incarcerated, but helping them transform their lives and being that resource and support for them as they transition out. There's a lot of need there in this area. So we definitely want to shine a light on that situation there. So again, that is our leadership luncheon. That event is March 9th, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Rainier Beach Community Center located here in Seattle, Washington. That's 8825 Rainier Avenue South. And if you are available to attend, we would love to have you to come on out. Tickets are available on Eventbrite and also too on our website, the Women in Business Expo Group site. You can check that website out at www.wibeg.biz. And again, that website where you can purchase tickets for the leadership luncheon is www.wibeg.biz. I also want to let y'all know, again, that website is up. So for those of you that are out there that are business owners looking for a place to place your products and services, create an extra avenue of revenue for yourself, you can check that website out. Again, it's www.wibeg.biz. You can email us, Women in Business Expo Group at yahoo.com for more information and details, how to become a member. Again, share your products and services, and also too, just share the work it is that you're doing. There is a page on there for upcoming events. So we always want to share, the work it is that we're doing in the community, how we can be that resource and support for others. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into today's interview here with Miss Angela of the Beacon Business Alliance here. Miss Angela, again, I want to thank you for your time this afternoon with us here on Women Empowerment Talk Radio. Why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I've done a little thinking. Thanks so much for providing questions in advance to give me a sense of the frame, what we're doing here today. And it gave me an opportunity to think a little bit into who am I today? Where did that come from? Throughout my childhood to young adult years, I navigated, an adverse, non-traditional personal and family and academic path. I had a great bond with with various family members early on, with my tia and uncle who lived with me as a toddler. Seemed like all the adults living in the house were studying to be teachers at the UW. We're all Huskies, and my mom included. And except my dad, who had to essentially be the income producer and left the UW to work various jobs. I remember helping him in his night job, or maybe he made me just sit there while he did the work, probably. He was a janitor at night and then worked in government during the day. So he was a janitor in the Neptune Theater, for instance. And so he was like sitting me, right? Babysitting me. And I just felt like I was working from day one. I've been a worker bee, as they say. And that's kind of a mentality that I have. A lot of BS happened in the early years, led to divorce. But my mom taught deaf and hard of hearing kids in the Seattle Public Schools for 30 years. And I'll never forget, between ages of like 7 to 9, things got tough, and she initiated an agreement with me that we would always argue in sign language. So we had, I had Spanish influence, sign language influence, and so the kind of the multilingual thing set in with me early on. I can say that really gave us a pathway to communication that only later did I realize how important that was. And only later I learned that we lived in 9 different places before I turned 10. There was a lot of instability. So, that a lot of influence caused me to go off on my own. Lived a big part of my teen and young adult years living on my own in unstable situations. So survival skills, communication, all of these things were really important to me. I would say place, belonging, and identity. Pretty much why I'm driven to do the work I do today. I would say I worked with creatives, artists, musical artists early in my first working situations, restaurant industry as well. And but being around creatives influenced me in my process of developing my own creative self. In the last 10 years, I've been putting my singing and my writing together as a songwriter. So that's a little bit who I am today. Again, I think all part of processing, understanding the influence, the things that impact you all through the years, drive, who you become and what you tend to want to do. I think professionally, maybe, I hope.
Mhm.
And so building community is where my heart is.
Yes, yes. And I definitely, we picked that up when we were preparing for the interview. You definitely have not only a business side, but an artistic side too, which that's great. That's good to have as a business owner, definitely to have that characteristic when it comes to, owning your own business. So awesome for you. Let our listeners know, Miss Angela, you mentioned as far as growing up an unstable hood. Um, it sounds like there was definitely some stability, but then there was some things as being unstable. Can you let our listeners know, how maybe that unstable part has reflected on your entrepreneur side, and maybe where that strength may come from? I'll put it that
Yeah, adversity builds strength, as we
way.
know. Definitely, I think living with my in early on the influences, watching the unstable factor of living with many family members who, were struggling. I know that I carry that with me today. And my mom would work one year while my dad went to school at the UW. And then my mom was 18 when she had me, so she was a kid, really, in essence. And then they would switch. And so I was watching, absorbing what was going on there. And I think, the examples that I have of what influenced me to be interested in, curious about survival, sustainability, in what we do for a living really came from early on. Obviously, my dad worked several jobs, and then my uncle and my aunt all were trying to figure out what they were doing. Between the ages of 9 and 11, my uncle's involvement with the United Farm Workers was really influential to me. While that was happening, I think, one time we were leafleting at the Safeway in Yakima when cops arrested us, or arrested him. I was just with him. My Moreno uncle with his light-skinned 11-year-old niece. I remember sitting so close to him, just out of cell. It felt like forever. And, and that wasn't a job, but that was a passion. And that was a thing he believed in and he was fighting for. And through that, then he built a sweat equity house building organization, and then worked was a co-founder and director of a La Clinica in Pasco that served the farm workers, many of the farm workers that didn't have healthcare and medical. And so I guess I feel like entrepreneurship is about community. It's about who we are in community, and what we're forced to do to make ends meet has to match up with who we are in the world. And I don't know. I think another thing I would say is speak to another example would be when I lived on my own. I was in the Bay Area, and the government was trying to evict folks living in houseboats and other water structures in North Bay, Sausalito waterfront. And I ended up there, and I was living in that alternative living situation in that community. But I attended the city council meetings, fighting for the right to stay, fighting for the right to exist. And so I think entrepreneurship must be supported with the consideration of who that person. It's a holistic kind of, it's an expression of who you are, and if it isn't, maybe it isn't as genuine as it could be. So that's where I come from about the work I do, and all of the jobs I've held throughout the years to make a buck influenced me, but then I influenced it, the job. I brought myself to it. And that's the beauty.
Wow. Yes. Let our listeners know, like I said, you are very passionate when it comes to entrepreneurship. Where do you believe that passion comes from? It really sounds like it's embedded in you, Let our listeners know, where does that come from?
I mean, I think maybe I've given you some little stories that I think it all comes down to relationships, building relationships, resources, and creativity. It's relationships are hard to quantify. Different roles in our society, and say so many cultural influences around what it means to build relationship and community. because of my own story, I know just being there for folks matters.
Yeah.
So if I can be there in a way that serves community, that fills my cup, really.
Mhm.
But you got to be there with something. So
Right.
most small business owners that I work with or currently I'm getting to know relate the lack of one thing or other, one resource or other. Initially, it's always a concern with customers knowing about their business. So, promotion marketing, that could be a service, something to help them with. But also then there's much more than that, because the reality is that there's so many little technical and financial barriers. You always got to look deeper into how to make that thing sustainable.
Yeah.
I'm a curious person and I want to solve problems. So that drives me to look deeper,
Yeah.
and want to know what's the thing that can be solved. I don't have to solve it for somebody, but if I have a resource that I know about and I can share that with them, so there's all sorts of routes to take in building a relationship,
Yes.
um, and being in build a community, doing community building.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm answering your question. I feel like creativity is really curiosity, and
Yeah.
creativity is really like problem solving. It's
Right.
Problem solving is based in the creative mind. Whether
Mhm.
you're a watercolorist, a songwriter, or you're building a unique business plan, you're
Yeah.
solving a problem.
Yeah, and that's basically is it too, and that's why I wanted to mention that about you, is your artistic side, because that's important. And again, being a business owner, is having that creativity side, and that jumped out at me as we were preparing for the interview. So let our listeners know, you're very culturally aware of what's going on in the community. Tell our listeners, how does your cultural awareness play a part in your business also too?
Well, I mean, I think the story I told you about, or the information I'm providing about like my early years, um, my dad's side is a mix of Latino and a mix of native Latino and European. It's a big mix, but the cultural influences from that always um, pulled me, inspired me, influenced me. And my mom's side is European. My grandpa was born in Scotland on my mom's side, so I have a really big mix. Always with curiosity, interested in in. Um, I mean, your question is really, how does my cultural awareness play a part
Yes, in
in
your
my,
business.
I I mean, I feel like it's rooted right deep, um, and my own identity confusion, played a big role in, mm, I think, in it too, and in why I'm driven to support, embrace, um, and realize in cultural um, cultural breadth of our cultural communities.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. Hopefully, that's an answer.
Yeah.
Um, I could talk about it for all day. It's really a work in progress,
Right.
and if you're not doing the work every single day, you're
Mhm.
not you're not gonna evolve yourself, or um, learn, and
Yeah.
so I can't say that I can't say that I know the answers. I know that I'm on the path.
That's it. That's exactly it too. Let our listeners know, Miss Angela, you know, and again, as we were preparing for the interview today, there is either it's a program or a website, and I just want clarity on this. What is the ESES Collaborative? Tell us what that is exactly.
Okay, yeah, I haven't talked at all really about what I do as the director of Beacon Business Alliance. You
Yeah.
know, we're a nonprofit organization founded really by neighborhood volunteers who we just started having conversations about how to support the small businesses. There wasn't anything and any organization at the time in place to do support. The Office of Economic Development in Seattle has a funding program to support these small community-based organizations across the city. So there are probably 17 or 20 of them, you know, in neighborhoods across the city, and in and so that is specifically about serving the small business with a real priority on those small, in our case, priority on small BIPOC and immigrant family-owned business owners that are that don't have the same and resource and customer base. Maybe the customer base is very culturally driven, or it's, you know, it's not the big Starbucks or whatever. So
Mhm.
it's a different, there's maybe the barriers that they face are different from what Starbucks is gonna be dealing with, right, at a different level. So Beacon Business Alliance, and I've also been involved in a couple of the community-based organizations in Southeast Seattle. So we, at one point when the pandemic started being, the word essential was being used a lot. The essential workers, who's essential? What does essential mean? We, Sarah Valenta, who's a home site, another nonprofit organization in South Seattle, Home Site. They work to provide housing for folks. They also have a department or a group of folks focused on community work, community support. And so another one of these community-based organizations, MLKBA, gets a lot of support from Home Site. Sarah sent out an email to a bunch of us and said, hey, what are we doing here in COVID that all these businesses are being shut down? What the heck does essential really mean? Let's come together and do some thinking on how we can support. So we put all of our databases together, all of our CRMs together into a directory, put it up online, and realized that this was an important thing. And we've been meeting every week on a weekly basis since 2020 to consider how we can leverage each other's strengths, work with each other and support each other's, you know, where capacity is different for every organization. And it was, I would say it was quite amazing to come together, because everything in this world really tends to be siloed. You know, we tend to work in silos. Government is siloed as heck. And so that from the outside, you might say it's broken. When you are siloed, you're not serving. So the main goal was for us to find ways to work together collaboratively to serve Southeast Seattle small business owners. So the directory that I mentioned turned into what is online today, and you can find it at essential, Seattle.com. So essential spelled out, and then Southeast is just the SE, Seattle.com. And that is an e-commerce based website that we hired an organization an agency in Seattle that does multiple sites like this with the same kind of e-commerce base. But what we're doing is offering a free page to any business owner. They can, if they already have their e-commerce site that's got all the bells and whistles, fine. But they could use this as another channel, another promotional way to improve their visibility. Some of the business owners that I work with that don't have the capacity to manage their own website are using this as a way to have virtual to be online.
Yes, to stay connected in the community and to continue to do the work, even if you do not
Right.
have an e-commerce site. So this sounds like an excellent opportunity for a number of business owners out there. For those of you that are just tuning in, you are listening to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is Women Empowerment Talk Radio. And we are here in the studio via StreamYard with our guest, Miss Angela, the Executive Director of the Beacon Business Alliance, located here in Seattle, Washington. And we're just here discussing, the services it is that they offer, the resources, the support it is that the organization gives. Why don't you go ahead and let our listeners know, for those of you that are out there that are interested, how does one contact you, Miss Angela?
The Essential Southeast Seattle has a email, info@essentialseattle.com. And my own email, angela@beaconbusinessalliance.org. We're a nonprofit, so .org. And the there's one thing I want to say about Essential Southeast Seattle is, in working together, we've been able to do programming. We have I would love to share the YouTube channel link that we have, although I did not do a good job and get it up in front of me before the meeting. I will find it and share it with you. Is there a way to share it online?
Yes.
Is there a chat?
And send that to me. We can definitely make sure that gets up and out to our audience.
Okay, if you just go to YouTube and enter Beacon Business Alliance, it'll pop up, I'm sure.
Awesome. Miss Angela, I want to thank you for your time this afternoon here with us on Women Empowerment Talk Radio. And I want to thank you, the listener, for tuning in to Rainier Avenue Radio.world. This is Women Empowerment Talk Radio, and I'm your host, Carmelle Bias.